of this scandal, namely that Steve Lawson wasn't even a pastor in his church. He was the lead preacher. And we noted that this kind of church structure is not only unbiblical, but that it likely contributed to the situation, or at least made this particular church vulnerable to this kind of scandal. We will talk about some of that again today, but we are also going to talk about lessons we can learn from the situation and how we might guard ourselves from a similar kind of fate. But before we get to those issues, we want to bring our listeners up to speed because more details have emerged since our last 2 episodes. So Cliff, I'll hand it over to you. Why don't you update us with some of the new details that have come out since last week?
Yeah, thanks, Derek. So we are officially, today is exactly 6 weeks since the statement came out from Trinity Baptist Church on Steve Lawson, September 19. Week number 6.
Wow.
And our last episode, I think, was about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And more information keeps leaking out.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to search to find it.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's not voluntarily being disseminated under the umbrella of transparency and full disclosure.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
It is.
So the truth is leaking out. You have to be very discerning to figure out what's true and what's not, because not only is truth leaking out, misinformation continues to leak out on this.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. Because the biggest truth we unveiled 2 weeks ago was that a few people even knew or aware of that he, like you already mentioned, he was not an elder or pastor at that church. And I thought that should become public knowledge, and because it changes the conversation and perspective about everything.
It sure does.
But as I keep reading updates from all these outlets and podcasts, whatever, it seems like most people still don't know that.
I know. And they're perpetuating the lead pastor moniker.
Which is perpetuating misinformation. And so, and there's a difference between giving wrong information and also versus giving wrong impressions.
Yeah.
But they are related. So some are giving wrong impressions who are, like Trinity Baptist Church, they weren't intentionally giving wrong information. Actually, in their original statement, they didn't give any wrong information. But because they were so cryptic, they were giving wrong impressions. And then people were globbing onto that, and then they're interpreting it through the wrong lens, making wrong assumptions. And then they turn that into wrong information. And I'll give a couple of examples of that. So, but as I'm thinking about that we continue to see trickles of the truth coming out little by little. We predicted this, you and I, a long time ago, because what was stated in the very beginning was a deficient statement on all the facts. There was a huge deficiency on giving full disclosure of what the public should have known, and as a result, people were guessing and connecting wrong dots and making false assumptions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what happens when you don't communicate fully and accurately on a situation, giving enough information. And that's made me think of Philippians 4, where it says, control your mind and your thought life by thinking on things that are true.
Yeah.
But it's hard to think on things that are true when you're given wrong information, because then you're thinking on misinformation, and you think that's true and that's false reality. Yeah. And the more time that goes by, we're on week 6, and I keep going back as the weeks go by to these first podcasts that came out on September 19th and the 20th in that first week.
Yeah.
And they become more and more erroneous as time goes by, of how way off base so many people were.
Yeah.
As we get more and more information. That's why you and I waited for 4 weeks before we even said anything, make sure we got, and we don't want to misrepresent, we don't want to give wrong information, and we don't want to give wrong impressions. And hopefully we don't err in those areas, but we are, finite, but we want to do the best that we can. And so once again, just a reminder that all the information that I'm going to be giving is either public knowledge already, has been, and it's on the public record and for many weeks, and has been verified by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So, I want to recount for us just briefly the history of what has transpired since over the past 6 weeks. And some of this, like you said, is new information. You even gave a little bit of new information. So I'll kind of go in chronological order of what we know as verified by multiple sources, reliable sources out there, people who were close to Steve Lawson, maybe some people at Masters Seminary, Grace Church, even Trinity Church, where I've got some of my information. Those who have traveled with Steve, like I mentioned earlier, like Al Mohler and James White and others. And there's another guy named John Harris who's been given some good, accurate information so far. So here's what we know. And some of this might be news to you. And I just call it the facts. Well, here are the facts. Lawson was, quote, removed indefinitely from all ministry activities, end quote. That's what the elders of Trinity Baptist said on September 19th. And Derek and I have already commented on that he was removed indefinitely from all ministry activities. He wasn't removed from a position. He wasn't removed from being an elder or pastor. He was removed from all ministry activities. Then the Master's Seminary, through Nathan Busenitz, made an official statement in writing to their whole community, including alumni, students who graduated, including me. I got an email. And in it, Nathan Busenitz early on said that according to the church of elders at Trinity released a statement saying that Steve Lawson was, quote, removed from pastoral ministry, end quote. That's not accurate. He wasn't removed from pastoral ministry.
That's right.
But when I read the original email, I didn't pick up on that.
You're right.
Neither did the rest of the world. but nowhere did Trinity Baptist say anywhere in writing that he was released from pastoral ministry. But Nathan's email to the Master's Seminary community says, quote, Steve Lawson was removed from pastoral ministry. What we know now is Steve Lawson didn't want to be a pastor.
Right.
He was a pastor of 2 previous churches that didn't go well. There was division. There were church splits. It's kind of an ugly history. And then he got to a point and said, I don't want to be a pastor. And they honored his wishes, and he just was a teacher. He was a guest teacher at all these places. Guest teacher at Ligonier and Trinity Church. So that would be misinformation right there that was disseminated by Nathan Busenitz, but that's because of wrong impressions that he had. Steve was not a pastor. Anyway, 6 weeks ago today, there is still no statement from Steve Lawson. No public statement.
You're right.
So the last we heard from reliable sources is that he was unrepentant and uncooperative. And until we hear otherwise, we just assume, I guess, he's still unrepentant and uncooperative.
I don't know what else you would assume.
Yeah.
Because if a man was truly broken and repentant, I think he would want to confess his sin, due to his public ministry and the public nature and how large a scandal this was. His repentance would include a public confession.
Yep.
So
he was exposed according to sources, he was exposed in March 2024 somehow. So this was brought to his attention. He was confronted, whether it was by the girl's dad or whatever. So basically he was confronted in March 2024, which is 8 months ago. Steve was confronted, or somebody knew about it. So we already heard about that.
Right.
Yet he still hasn't repented. So really it's been 8 months of no confession or repentance on his part.
That's a good point.
Instead of 6 weeks.
Right.
Just for the record again, he was not a pastor. I want to make that clear, because that's not sinking in. People aren't getting that.
And it's kind of the biggest part of it. That's what
It is.
When you said that in the last couple of episodes, that was news to me at the time, and I just thought, boy, this is what we need to focus on: is this reality that he had chosen not to be a pastor, and then communicated that to this Trinity Church, and then they're like, okay, you can be the lead preacher. And I think the moral of the story is, whenever someone says, I don't want to be a pastor, I just want to be a preacher, you want to take that into account.
Yeah.
You might want to run for the hills.
And just outlet after outlet after outlet is just saying Pastor Steve Lawson, whether he's the lead pastor, head pastor, whatever, they're still saying he had to step down as pastor.
Right.
USA Today, Charisma Magazine has had several articles. ABC News, all these outlets are all saying the same thing. Lead pastor, head pastor, the pastor stepped down. I've actually written all of them to the letter to the editor and saying, you need to correct this. One of them got back with me.
Wow.
Charisma Magazine. They actually are interested in correcting it if they're wrong.
Nice.
Because they're just disseminating wrong information that's not helpful. And it's like you said, it's one of the most important points. So he was not a pastor. He was not an elder at Trinity Bible Church, which we said. He was not the pastor or lead pastor of that church. He was not a member of that church. How do I know all this? Because I've been trying to get a hold of Trinity Baptist Church in Texas for several weeks, and I finally got a hold of somebody that was willing to talk to me who actually worked at the church.
Wow.
And they verified everything that we said.
Wow.
He was not. They were reluctant to tell me that, but they agreed. He was not an elder. He was not a pastor. He was not the lead pastor. They kind of waffled when I said, was he a member? They didn't want to tell me. And it was pretty obvious he wasn't. And they also agreed and acknowledged that as far as they know, the elders at their church are not the ones managing the Matthew 18 process with him of discipline. Because they can't.
Right. That's what we said. There's no way that they could.
So who's managing the Matthew 18 process?
That was my next question. So who's managing it? Did they say?
Where's the accountability? No, they didn't say. They didn't want to answer.
Okay.
But this is important because you go back to the very beginning when we were being lectured by all kinds of people, including G3 Ministries made a statement early on and said, we need to let the local elders at Trinity Baptist Church handle this in the discipline process and the restoration process. And the rest of us need to just be hands off, be quiet, don't ask questions. Literally. Leave it to the local church. And then Tim Challies in his panel said the same thing. It's kind of a rebuke. You Christians out there, we're trying to micromanage this. This is the local church elders' responsibility. Trust them. They're godly men.
Yeah.
They're saying that in ignorance.
Right.
And so now Trinity Church admits we can't do anything. So who's holding him accountable?